Go start something, anything. And that thing is going to fail miserably, expect it, but it's going to yield the thing that helps you. Oh, very cool. I read the other day that y'all are the most expensive city to live in the world right now. Is that true?
Yeah, it's pretty expensive in Sydney. Like houses go for like even I live like an hour out of the city, 40 minutes out from the city, and houses are like $1 million, which is crazy. It's insane.
Yeah, that's like worse than New York.
Wow, really? How much is it an apartment like near the city?
Dude, if you're willing to be outside of Manhattan, it's weird because if you're in Manhattan, it's, who knows what, $30 million. But the minute you leave Manhattan, if you go to Brooklyn, you can get a nice little condo for $500,000.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's just this weird bell curve. I'm not in New York. I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona. So, land is cheap out here. I can buy whatever I want for whatever I want. But yeah, it's just weird to see. It's weird to see the pendulum swing, And I don't know where everything's going to land either. It's been kind of fun to watch, to be honest with you. I guess we'll have to keep an eye on it.
I was following Grant Cardone, and when he came to Sydney, what he took away was like, when I go back to America, I'm buying up everything. That's his conclusion. He was like, he just saw how expensive it was to live on the coast and how expensive Sydney was. And I was like, damn, like America's probably going to go on a similar trajectory across any city on the coastline. And then he went ham and just wants to buy everything now.
That's exactly all the real estate investment trusts, because, everybody's been so liquid. They don't know where to put their money. And they were buying all the e-com businesses, but the valuations have gone insane. And then they bought all the SaaS businesses and the valuations went insane. And now they're just buying real estate, all of them. And what's really funny too, I've got a couple of buddies in the space at a high level, and they don't care about returns. All they care about is capital preservation. So like, they're not even trying to make money, which is the strangest thing I've ever heard from investment club. They're just like, we just want to make sure we beat inflation. So it's an interesting world we're in now.
Interesting. What's your thoughts? Because like inflation's like at 9%. Like, how are you going to beat inflation if you're that steady?
Yeah, well, and there's a case to be made that real inflation is higher. I think inflation is underreported, but then you have really weird stuff. I just bought some gold today because I'm a weird gold bug and a prepper, and gold hasn't moved. Gold's actually dropped, dude. Like we printed 40% of the US dollar that exists was printed in the last 2 years. And yet the price of gold is dropping. It makes no sense whatsoever. So I have no idea, man. It's just the weirdest thing to me.
I was reading like Alex Becker's tweet, and it was showing this sort of cycle, 100-year cycle, and how towards the end of like 100-year sort of period where the powerhouse and their reserve currency ends up being super inflated, they're printing it like crazy to pay off debt. It eventually gets to a period where everyone goes back to gold. They revert back to gold.
I'm trying to find a book on my bookshelf right. Oh, here we go. If you read anything this year, this is the one, Changing World Order by Ray Dalio. Ray is a student of history, and he's identified this 6-stage cycle that every single superpower in the history of the world has gone through. And stage 1, you're basically an infant, and stage 6, you've collapsed. And he goes, the United States at stage 5.5. And then, this is what's really interesting too, Ray's really bullish on China. So if you look, the Chinese economy is like way more sophisticated than our economy. So I don't know if you can see that graph. Like, this just looks like spaghetti. It's all gobbledygook. The red line is China, the blue line is the US.
Okay.
Well, you think to yourself like, okay, that just is what it is. But when you zoom out, you can see China's been going through these cyclical markets for hundreds of years.
Wow.
And we just happen to have caught them on a downtrend, but they're just infinitely more scalable than we are, according to Ray, economically, and positioned. We're on stage 5.5 and they're on stage, like 2.5. So they're positioned to just come in and take over. And he thinks it's going to happen in the next 30 to 50 years. So for whatever that's worth, I don't know what your thoughts or opinions are on it, but part of me is like, I'm going to go snap up as much Chinese currency as I possibly can. But there's an issue there too, because it's so tightly held and controlled and I know nothing about it. I went the other day just to try to see if I could buy, and it looked hard. So I need to go to school on it.
What's your thoughts on crypto then?
I lost 250 grand in crypto.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was knee deep in Ethereum. I'm a strong believer. And I think that we'd be fine if we weren't going through, a full on potential recession. But I'll show you so you can see there, I had peaked out at 313,000. My basis is about 60K.
Damn.
And I'm down to 76 today. So I'm actually still playing with house money, interestingly, but.
Oh, wow. So you got in early.
Oh, dude, I was way before the curb. I actually got in even earlier, got out like a fucking idiot, and then came back in. But I'm bullish on Ethereum and Bitcoin both. I'll play with some of the Reddit coins because all I do is because Reddit, the smartest people in the world are on Reddit. So I just watch these little Reddit f***ers, and when they start talking about something, I'll go buy what they're talking about because I know they're about to pump it and dump it. And I just get out super early. So I've done pretty well just watching Reddit.
Interesting. Yeah, I've heard like there was a friend of a friend who I think he put in 5K into Shiba Inu.
Yeah, I've got some Shiba.
And it somehow turned into a freaking million.
Like insane. He got in
So he got in
early.
way early. I didn't get in quite that early. Yeah. What am I at on Shiba? If I had sold, I'd have done really well. Like my Shiba holdings right now are $1,200. But at one point I think it was at 30K. I mean, cause it skyrocketed and then it dropped.
How often do you like to buy and sell over like 3-month periods, like swing trade, or do you like to hold forever?
Yeah, that's probably part of my downfall too, is I just buy and I just hold it because I there's no future on a long enough timeline. There's no future where crypto hasn't taken a predominant position in the global economy. It can't happen. Even with heavy government intervention. So, you have like entire countries that have taken crypto as their currency base. So I think the biggest case can be made for Bitcoin for a bunch of reasons. The most functional case can be made for Ethereum. The problem with Ethereum, and I'm really bullish on Ethereum, most of my holding is in Ethereum. They fucked up when they rolled it back. I don't know if you know that story, but there was something like a hack, I guess, but there was an event with Ether where billions of dollars were effectively stolen. And what they did is they rewound the blockchain and just decided, all right, we're going to go back and start from here. But as soon as they did that, and they did it for a good reason, it was everybody knew this was the wrong thing. It happened to a bunch of people. But the minute they did it was like, oh, so anytime you want, you get to come in here, you're no different than the Federal Reserve. Anytime you want, you get to come and print and change and whatever. So the most compelling thing about Bitcoin is, and I forget the cat's name, but the guy that just invented it and then disappeared off into the ether, no pun intended. The fact that there truly is no central repository, there's no governing body. It's like, it's as deregulated as anything could possibly be. And no other coin as of yet has been able to replicate that level of success. So I think just the faith that people have in Bitcoin, dude, there are some die-hard Bitcoiners. Yeah. So no matter what, I just don't see that going anywhere, or it would take a really catastrophic collapse, like World War III, not enough food, breadbasket burning down, whatever. Anyway, I don't know why I'm boring you with this stuff, man. I'm sorry.
What's your thoughts on like the countries that went 100% Bitcoin, like what Venezuela, like how does it work when Bitcoin literally just, now it's like 1/3 of all-time highs? How does that work? Because they're most likely paying for wheat and exports or imports, things that are coming in US dollars, but then now their Bitcoin is cut in half. Like, is everyone charging more? How's that gonna work?
It's a good question, dude. I'm an armchair economist, so if I actually knew what the hell I was talking about, I'd be a wealthier person. My feeling on Venezuela specifically is it couldn't have gotten any worse. They had like literally no other options. So I think the shift to Bitcoin was pretty intelligent, all things considered. They couldn't do another commodity-backed currency because they don't have enough commodity base, and they couldn't do another fiat currency because nobody would trust it. So for them to shift to Bitcoin, it was almost as though if the government didn't do it, the people were going to do it anyway. They were going to move to a barter system. So I think that Bitcoin was just the conduit through which they were allowed to transfer things, because saying, hey, I'll give you some bread for some candles was inefficient. You know what I mean? So I actually don't think the value of Bitcoin matters to Venezuelans, because I don't think they're using Bitcoin as the backdrop. I think they're using it as the method of transfer. And all it becomes is the barterable currency based off of what, if I've got bread and you've got meat, we're going to figure out how much bread is worth how much meat. But the idea that you need as much bread as I need meat we're at a maximum inefficiency. And so now it's, well, how much Bitcoin is worth how much bread and how much meat in this moment. And if Bitcoin goes up or down, who gives a shit, as long as you're not holding. So as long as you're using it as a method of, I bought this and then I went and got that. If you're holding the bag, and some people are, if you're holding the bag, it sucks. And you get caught in that, and then it is what it is. But the fact that Bitcoin is so volatile, I think would actually encourage the idea that, I'm going to use this very quick. I got this for my bread. I'm going to go get some meat. I'm going to go get the thing that I need. So it kind of fires up an economy like that one too, which would have to be I don't know anything about Venezuela, but it would have to be very heavily service-based and very day-to-day. You're getting your groceries for the day. You're getting the fuel for the day. So I wouldn't be too worried about the destruction of Bitcoin. Not the destruction, but the devaluation of Bitcoin for their purposes. I think where the devaluation of Bitcoin really hurts is for, guys like me, and maybe guys, I don't know the way that you use it, but if you're using it as a store of wealth, then it's pretty discouraging to see it drop. I like the drop though, because I'm just going to snap as much up as I possibly can. Like I just don't. And I hope that, 10 years from now, this is going to be recorded and somebody's going to like throw this in my face and be like, see, Kashmir, an idiot. Because, maybe it ends up being worthless, but I just don't see a future where it hasn't taken a really important position. It won't be like the currency. I think that's horseshit. And I know a bunch of guys are like, oh, it's going to be the center of everything. I don't think that, especially with quantum computing, I don't think that I don't think it can be the core. But I think it just like gold, just like silver, just like copper, I think it takes a position as a commodity that people are willing to use as a store of wealth and just for capital preservation.
How have you been dollar cost averaging back in and buying more, or are you sort of trying to time the bottom and you're going to buy a ton if it goes down to like 11, 12, 13K?
What's your plan?
Dude, if it goes down to 11 or 12, I'm buying as much as I can possibly get a hold of. Right now, I knew there was going to be a couple dead cat bounces, not because I'm smart, because that's just the way that these things work. So I kind of wanted to see where stabilization goes. And I can tell you, as a young man, I always used to try to get in at the extreme bottom. Now that I'm old, I like to see a little bit of lift. I like to see enough lift that I regret not getting in earlier. You know what I mean? But I've lost so much money trying to time the bottom that now I'd rather see, okay, other people are confident. And, if it goes from, what is it at 20 now, 21 or something, if it goes from 20 to 25, that now lets me know like, okay, there's some folks that are snapping this thing back up and they're snapping it up in quantities that are tax relevant. It's at $20,251. So, I think Bitcoin's a buy at 20, but then if you said, what's the likelihood that it drops to 10? I actually think it's pretty good. I could see Bitcoin dropping from 20 to 10 and I wouldn't be the least bit surprised, but I just told you it was a buy at 20. And that's because I'm thinking the problem is people talk, they don't first establish, you have to define terms, and it's like, well, on a long enough timeline, 10 and 20 are both buys. So who gives a shit? But that on a long enough timeline is a really big caveat. Do I think you should go mortgage your house and take out a HELOC to buy Bitcoin? No, absolutely not. But I don't know, man. On a long enough timeline, you mentioned earlier with Grant Cardone, land is an insane buy. I can buy land in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan for $1,000 an acre, which blows me away. Like really solid farmland, air, water, and mineral rights. And I'm like, I'll just buy that and sit on it and give it to my kids. Why wouldn't you do that? So there's a bunch of stuff that you look at and you're like, man, on a long enough timeline, like this is why I get in trouble when I go to Costco. Because, it's like, oh, 50,000 pounds of butter for $7. Like, of course, I can't not buy that thing. Like, I don't know how I'm going to use it though. So I don't know, dude. It's interesting. It'll be interesting to watch, and it'll be interesting to see how wrong I really am.
Right now, I've noticed like, if we look at the previous recession, it sort of takes like a 2 to 3 year it just goes down for 2 to 3 years. And it feels like we're at the very beginning of this downturn and everyone's going ham. Everyone's like buying the dip. Everyone's spending a ton of money, but the recession just started. Like, why aren't people waiting a bit longer?
Dude, that's exactly why I told you I like to be where I can see a substantive increase, rebound, because you're absolutely right. I think we have so much further to go. I don't know if you've been following Michael Berry on Twitter. He's the big short guy. He predicted the '08 collapse. So did Dalio, by the way. Like, I mean, really smart financial guys, and they're all like battening down hatches. So I think you're absolutely right. I don't think a recession started yet. I mean, that's a technical truth. The recession hasn't started yet. In theory, it starts in, the end of this year, the beginning of next year. And I think it's gonna, because we had such a perfect storm too. I think we've got a lean couple of years. What's really interesting about that is I think it helps what I do for a living. I think performance advertisers are going to see a lot of uptick in interest. Businesses are going to kill SEO, content marketing, influencer, social, everything that's top of the funnel. They're going to go straight for the bottom of the funnel. And there's historical precedence for this too. In 2008, Google ad spend went up, not down. Google growth slowed, but ad spend went up, and not all advertising channels could say that. Radio, television, newspaper all dropped. It's top of the funnel, I should say. So like awareness building, marketing drops, and everybody goes straight for the monetization. COVID, same thing. I doubled in size on. I thought I was gonna have to lay people off, and I couldn't hire fast enough. So I think in a recession, I think performance marketers are gonna do really well if they can deliver. But the key there is gonna be picking your client, because it's costly to bring on clients and it's costly if they don't retain. And you're going to get people that are willing to pay you anything. And they're going to say, hey, $100,000 a day, that's great, let's spend it. And the problem there is, well, how viable is their market? How viable is their product? And does the customer exist? Because in a recession, that's a really important question. You talk about like luxury products. My dad sells hand knotted area rugs. You can spend 60 grand on one rug. And I'm like, in a recession, I don't think that customer exists. So if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I want to sell hand knotted area rugs or luxury watches or whatever, I'm just like, I don't know, dude. You'd have to have a pretty compelling reason why you think that that's a viable market now. So, if we're talking marketing agencies, I think that choosing your customer, banking on longevity. I really love Nassim Nicholas Taleb's whole paradigm on anti-fragile. Like, go find the anti-fragile thing, the thing that I've seen this in mobile home parks. Me and my business partner are genning up leads from mobile home parks, and we've cracked the code on it. It's hard. It's hyper competitive as an industry. But now that we know what we're doing, mobile home parks improve in value in a recession, because, if you get evicted from your house, you go to a house rental. If you get kicked out of your house rental, you go to an apartment. You get kicked out of an apartment, you go to a mobile home. So mobile home is the last stop before homelessness, and is predatory as that sounds. We're not taking advantage of anybody. I'm just going to go put myself in the asset that I know, this is the life preserver for the economy in a lot of ways. And there's other things like that, like people stop buying cars and they start repairing them. So what does that mean? That means like AutoZone as a company, if you're buying stock, or mechanics as a client, if you're trying to serve somebody. Appliance repair, dude. I think there's a huge opportunity for appliance repair. Nobody's going to buy appliances in recession. They're going to fix what they've got. So there's space here. There's room, but you have to change the way that you think. And again, I'm just saying this as an old guy that's been through one of them already. The '08 recession destroyed me. Lost my house, lost my car. I was very close to homeless. I got into an apartment that was offering 18 months if you send it, or 3 months free if you send an 18-month lease. Like, I was trolling Costco for free tryouts. That's how I was eating. So I've got entrepreneurial PTSD, but I've seen how much value can shift. Like, I had a whole bunch of shit that I thought was really valuable until the recession hit, and I'm like, oh, nobody wants this. Like, if you got a Rolex when people are hungry, it's worthless. So anyway, that got real weird and dark. I hope there's some value to be distilled in there.
No, I love that. That totally makes sense. Like, I wanted to ask, like, yeah, during a recession, do you think it would be harder to get clients? are your conversion rates going to be much lower? If you have a process to get clients, like you run ads, you get leads, you do appointment setting, you call these leads, each part of the process, the percentage, shop rates, everything just decrease, or do you think it's the opposite?
Depends on the business you're in. I've got a Google Ads agency. And so the benefit we have with Google Ads is if you picture a sales funnel in your mind's eye, we're generally focused on the bottom of the funnel. With Google's new products, Performance Max specifically, that's not necessarily true, but that's the paradigm that everybody has. So that'll be the thing that they go to. Most businesses try to coach themselves out of Google Ads quickly. And I don't blame them because it's the most expensive way to earn a customer, but it's also the fastest and most effective way to earn a customer. So I think as a Google Ads agency, I think I'm going to do really well in a recession. I'll lose clients. I think I'll lose 10 to 20% of my client base in the beginning because they'll have whatever fulfillment issues, client issues, employee issues. So I'll take a small drop, but then I'll take a big spike. And a lot of people there's billions of dollars being spent inside of Google Ads campaigns and C- campaigns, C- to C+, where they don't even realize a couple of tweaks and my fee instantly becomes a profit center instead of a cost center. So all of those start paying attention. Everybody with the big ivory tower agency fires the ivory tower agency or the big marketing firm. And then they go straight to what's impacting my bottom line right now today. So if you're in the marketing space, you're going to want to make sure that you're one of the levers that people can pull and see money. And that's not always true. And I'm not telling you that the other marketing forms are bad. They're not. I believe in SEO more than I believe in Google Ads. And I own a Google Ads agency. But we invest in SEO heavily. But the thing about SEO is I can turn it off and not feel the impact for 2 years. And then in a recession, that's what I'm going to do. Social media marketing, same thing. Influencer marketing, same thing. Branding, same thing. Content creation, thought leadership, courses. Like these are all amazing investments to make, but not in a recession. And in a recession, I'm like, what's the lever? What's the button that I pull that makes money right now today? And so just be ready to pivot. Don't get romantic about how you make your money. Don't do things that are counter to your principles, but you need to be malleable. If you're too rigid, you're going to break.
Interesting. What niche is most of your clients in? And do you have any pivot plan for the recession, or are you going to just do what you're currently doing?
A flood is coming and I happen to be in a boat. You know what I mean? If it was a fire, I'd be fucked. Yeah. So I'm just lucky in that way. It's not because I'm intelligent or planned ahead. It's just, I just happen to be in the right vessel. So if you see a flood coming, sorry, go ahead.
What niche did you say you were in? I think I missed that.
Oh, e-com. So I've got 200 clients and I'd say 60% of them are e-commerce. Another 10 or 15% are SaaS. And then it's sprinkled across every industry you could possibly think of. So, and I'll lose some e-commerce clients too. The supply chain is a huge problem. Some of my e-com clients are in industries that just aren't going to survive a recession. I lost a former client actually, but a friend, he sold paleo products and he just couldn't, with shipping was killing him is the first thing, but then supply chain was the second thing. And he couldn't connect all the dots. So he just closed up shop. So I do think I'm going to lose some clients, but I think I'll gain exponentially more than I'll lose. And labor. Right now, I'm having a hard time finding client managers, finding Google Ads specialists, pretty easy to make money freelancing. As soon as the recession hits, I'm a fat kid at the buffet line and I'm going to hire all the scared entrepreneurs I can. Because man, there's going to be some brilliant people out there that are willing to sacrifice profitability for security. And I won't have them for very long, I'll have them for 2 years or 3 years or whatever. That's fine. God bless them. I don't deserve them for very long either. That's the type of person that really should be doing their own thing because I'll never be able to pay them what they can make on their own. But during a recession, I'm going to be the great big umbrella that sort of protects them from the storm. So, it's kind of the Warren Buffett thing, like buy fear. So I think I'll get better labor, better help, more access to clients. I don't know why I'm selling you on my agency right now. It's just what I think. But if you're in the marketing space, just go make sure you're close to the nozzle that is money. If you're selling people on subscribers or vanity metrics or ranking or, any of those things, I'd be looking for additional value provision and a way to connect yourself to, a positive ROI.
That makes sense. I think, yeah. Last year I spent a period because I had a bunch of cash sitting aside and I just didn't, I had 200 grand. It wasn't enough to get into real estate, but it was like more than enough to get into stocks, but I didn't feel right with either options. And I just studied what the richest people in the world do. Like Elon Musk, they don't own any real estate. Well, they sort of do, but it's a very small amount. And they don't really invest in stocks. And they really just invest in their company. But like, how do you invest money into your company? The common things that all these billionaires do is they invest in people. People are the highest returning asset. And I realized, holy shit, people are literally, employees are an asset that give you cash flow. It's not literally cash, it's more sort of output and sort of producing work, but that's sort of cash flow.
100%. It's for all intents and purposes, it's cash flow. You know, and again, on a long enough timeline, I do agency coaching. I teach other people how to run agencies, and I tell them that an agency only has 3 value propositions. There's people, programs, and processes. Programs are generally available to everybody unless you build your own. Processes are pretty easy to figure out, and they're purchasable. You can go buy really amazing courses out there on anything you want and learn it overnight. The only thing that has yet to be commoditized down to a level that's irreplaceable is people. People are so important. They're so important. And it's weird because our paradigm as employers oftentimes doesn't give credence to that. You know, business owners like to think about people as just, oh, it's, you know, I'm playing SimCity and I take this person and I put them on this assembly line and they do their thing. And it's like, no, man, the difference between person A and person B, you know, if you've got a peak performer in person A, the difference is exponentially staggering. You know, I learned recently that the Pareto distribution isn't 80-20. Everybody thinks that Pareto's 80-20. The Pareto distribution is the square root of the number of participants perform half of the value. Now, if you have 10 people, that just means that 3 people do 50% of the value, which you look at that and you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But if you have 1,000 people, you know, or even 100, you know what I mean? Now it's like, oh my God, like I have 10 of my 100 employees are doing 50%, which is insane. And that's been my experience as an employer. I've been an employer for 15 years. And when I was a young man, I used to try to get the cheapest people I could and get them to do the most that I possibly can. And now I go for peak performers. And the interesting thing about peak performers is you have to pay 10% more than the high water mark, which isn't bad. That's not bad. But if you pay 10% more, and this is a data-driven truth too, Jordan Peterson talks about this in a podcast. He did some sort of study for, I forget the university study, but he did a study, I think it was for a university, and they were studying employee performance. And what they found was the people that were paid 10% more did 40% more work, but it wasn't a lead indicator. The salary wasn't a lead indicator. All it meant was a peak performer demands 10% more, but a peak performer is going to do 40% more work. And so go find the best people. And then, and this is a soapbox that I get on often, don't get in the way of their growth. You know, so many businesses try to keep people to their detriment, you know, slapping on golden handcuffs and disallowing side hustles, and they're going to outgrow you. An agency is going to have somebody for 2-3 years tops. Assist them on that endeavor, and all you'll do is benefit from it, because otherwise you're forcing them to lie to you. Now you're going to have somebody who gives you a 2-week notice when they're ready to leave, and they're not going to leave on phenomenal terms, and they're going to become your competitor. I've got an example that I love. His name's Collin Schmelebeck. Collin is now Google Ads famous. He's if you go to his Twitter profile, he's got 35,000 Twitter followers. Wicked smart kid. He's got a really great freelance business. He was my employee. And when I hired him, I was like, dude, you're too smart for me. And I know, you know, like I'm a stepping stone for you, but I need 2 years out of you. He gave me my 2 years. He gave me 6 months notice, which gave me a really, really helpful period of time to like replace him, because he was a valuable asset. Now I refer work to him and he refers work to me, because he doesn't want to do the big agency thing. He just wants to be a freelancer. So when a client comes in that's too big for him, he sends them my way. So, you know, here I have this phenomenal asset in Collin that I wouldn't have had if I tried to like, you know, I'm going to keep everybody that comes and works for me and you're going to stay under my, like, it's just a flawed model. So people are important, and know that you're a stepping stone, and that your best people are going to leave, and they're probably going to leave faster. But if you put them in a position to trust you and you help them on their growth, then all you're doing is creating an even better asset later. And you're not putting yourself in a position of constantly having to find a way to replace those people. You know, they'll tell you that it's happening. It's happening. Collin's my best example, but it's happened more than once. Anyway, that got soapboxy, man, but I hope there's some value there.
That's so fun. I appreciate that story. What's your process on getting clients? Like, how did you get to a point where you have hundreds of clients?
Right now, we're nerd famous. So I've got a YouTube channel that I think is probably the most active YouTube channel on Google Ads specifically. My podcast is in the top 0.5% of all podcasts in the world. So I get 300,000 downloads a month. It's like
Whoa.
8 Madison Square Gardens or something. So leads for me are easy now. When they weren't easy though, and this will get incestuous, but I used Google Ads. I ate my own dog food. So we use Google Ads to advertise for people looking for Google Ads. And that was a pretty solid little approach. If you're brand new and just getting started, what I'll tell you is go niche down and niche down hard. Don't say like, I have a student that I make fun of because when I started with her, she goes, "Oh, I help female business owners." And I'm like, that's not a niche. That's half the world. Like I have an agency that's a side hustle of mine just because I'm obsessed with Montessori schools. I have an agency that serves Montessori schools. And that's the perfect niche if you think about it, because it's not schools, it's not private schools, it's not private preschools, it's private Montessori preschools. There's only 4,500 accredited Montessori schools in the United States. Adjusted for margin of error, that's zero. And yet I've got $1 million agency that serves Montessori schools. So go get a niche and niche all the way the heck down. And when you niche all the way down, what's cool about it is marketing is no longer a problem, because guaranteed, bet money, there's a Google group or a Facebook group or a LinkedIn group or, a Reddit thread or a Slack channel or whatever, where all of these people hang out. There's probably a dozen of them. Montessori is the smallest niche I can probably think of. And there's 3 Montessori associations I can name off the top of my head. There's probably 20 Facebook groups that I can go join, and then go and join that group and then start providing value, give epic amounts of value, give. And people have no choice when you give, but to return. And, that's just go find somebody that you love, find a group of people that you love and go love on them. And, surprise, surprise, money follows. Like it's a pretty simple formula. And what's funny is like, it's proven, it's tried and true. This is the way that it works. And I don't know why people keep trying to reinvent this wheel, but, yeah, for whatever that's worth, man. If a meteor hit my agency today, that's what I'd be doing tomorrow, is I'd go find a super specific niche, find a way that I could provide epic value, which isn't hard because you just have to go solve a problem that they haven't solved yet. And then I'd go give and I'd have an ascension attached to my giving.
Now, a lot of people I think that are looking to create an agency, they have this mindset where they're like, there's a bit of, what's that word? Imposter syndrome, where they're like, how can I solve this business's problem when I haven't even solved my own problem of making money? They're going to be the solution to my problem. How do I solve their problem?
Yeah, it's a little chicken and egg. So I think imposter syndrome is healthy. If you don't have imposter syndrome, you're probably a narcissist. So I've got the #1 ranked Google Ads agency on the planet. I created the training and certification for digital marketers traffic cert. I still feel like, why on earth does anybody listen to me? You know what I mean? So like, if that ever leaves me, I'd be very concerned about, whatever my ego is doing to my head. Here's the thing that helps with imposter syndrome is the truth. Use the truth as a shield. If you're telling the truth at all times, you don't have to worry. And here's what I mean. So I go into a business, let's say we picked a niche and we're going to go after CPAs. And that's actually not even a good enough niche because there's CPAs that focus on specific industries. So, let's say we're going after CPAs that help small businesses or whatever. I'd go into a CPA firm and I'd say, hey, Andy, I know that you run a CPA firm. I really want to help with your marketing. I've never done a CPA's marketing before. Cards on the table. I know quite a, and here's my pedigree. So here's the things that I do know. Here's what I do have. Would you be willing to be my guinea pig if I did it for you for free? And now it's like, well, that feels kind of compelling to me as a CPA. Here's this young man or woman who's willing to just throw their cards on the table, do a bunch of sweat equity. I know they're going to make some mistakes, but I bet you they're going to crack the code too. And then now that I've cracked the code for Andy, then I'm going to go to Andy. I'm going to say, hey, Andy, this was great. Was this good for you? And you're going to say, yeah. And I'm going to say, do you have any friends that you think could use my service? And you're going to say, yeah, I've got Sally. And then I get to go to Sally. And this time it's like, hey, Sally, I'm not new at this anymore. Look what I just did for Andy. And now you're my first real customer outside of Andy, who's just my buddy, so I'm going to give you a hell of a freaking price, but now I get to charge. And then when Sally, introduces you to Jake or whatever, now you're a real company. So give first, give last, and give more. And at the end of it, I think you're going to find yourself in a position to where your work speaks for itself. And that's the prerequisite. You have to be willing to get good, because there's a lot of agencies, and I've done agency coaching. I've done it for digital marketers. So I only bring them up, not to name drop, but just to talk to the scale of people that I've seen. A lot of agencies, they tell me that getting a customer is their problem. But when I really dig into their model, they don't know what they're doing. They haven't actually gotten good at anything yet. You took a weekend certification and now you're a digital marketer, really? So go get good at something. Get good at something to a point to where you're confident in that one thing. It doesn't need to be massive. Google Ads is a little teeny tiny sliver of the marketing mix, but we just niche down into it. Go get good at whatever you think really resonates with you. And then once you're good, now you can approach people with a level of confidence that allows you to deliver on the thing that you're promising that you can deliver. And if you're not good yet, that's okay. But do what I said earlier and tell people, like, hey, I'm learning, but I'm willing to work for free and that's going to resonate with some folks and it's not going to resonate with others, but that would be my recommended approach.
Interesting. So let's say you've done marketing for a few years and you sort of know that lever that you can pull that can make businesses money, and it's sort of those low-hanging fruits: retargeting, dynamic retargeting ads. Do that on Google, do that on Facebook, get that pixel, just retarget all the people in the last 90 days, throw in a bunch of interesting creatives, and you sort of pull that lever and now they're making money and you're going to retain that customer. But are clients getting smart where when they're sort of that big and they have a lot of traffic coming through, they've already set up those low-hanging fruits, and you can't really target the smaller sort of businesses because they have no audience to retarget. So are clients getting really smart where you can't just come in and offer a retargeting service and get them amazing ROI and they're happy and they're going to stay with you for the next year?
It's a really good point that I'm gonna challenge just a little bit, because I think that there's a spectrum. I think that you have, within any industry, you have your top 10% that'll do exactly what you just said. There's this crack badass that's just like going to figure it out. And maybe they'll hire you for a little bit and then jettison you as soon as they figure it out. And then they put their own VA on it and then let it run. And then there's the bottom 10% that just sucks. They have no traffic anyway. Retargeting's not going to help. There's whatever. But then there's that 80% in the middle that they just want to be a CPA or a dentist or a dry cleaner or a SaaS company, and they don't want to do the retargeting. And here's the other piece too, is as long as you don't get complacent, because retargeting 5 years ago is a way different game than it is today. Retargeting 5 years ago was, if you think about it, was a batch and blast play to everybody that's coming to your website, generally from two channels, Facebook and Google. Now, if you're doing retargeting, you're probably, hopefully, prioritizing traffic based off of engagement and using an omni-channel approach. So you've got Facebook, Google, Pinterest, Twitter, AdRoll, Outbrain, Taboola, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in that 5-year span, as long as I came to you, I'd say for something like retargeting, it's a really good example, by the way. As long as I came to you every 90 days and I said, hey, Andy, just wanted you to know, our retargeting strategy is updated a little bit and X, or I've refreshed your creative because of Y, or here's your data and analytics. As long as I'm coming to you and I'm providing consistent value, and I don't try to play Tim Ferriss 4-hour work week, set and forget it so I can hang out on a beach, I'm not going to lose 80% of my client base. And the ones that I lose, I'll replace with others as I get better. So I think as long as you're not getting complacent, your client's going to realize, and this is the inflection point. As long as the value you're bringing exceeds what you're being paid, you should have a job forever. And the day that it doesn't, you don't deserve a job. And they should fire you. And I'd hope, let's go to the client and be like, hey, this just isn't worth it for you anymore. Let's figure out something else.
So over the last 2 years, I've sort of been in the education and info product space, and it's like a grind. It's not that easy. You're not selling a digital product with zero cost it's like pretty hard. Like you have to, there's a whole funnel, there's a whole process. It's not that hard to convince someone to drop $9.97. But strangely, over the last 6 months, I'm sort of surrounded by these agency owners where they have, consistent cash flow. Whereas in the info product space, there's ups and downs. It's not consistent at all. And I'm seeing these agency owners with consistent cash flow wanting to get into the info product space. Whereas I'm looking at my situation, I'm like, maybe I should get into the agency space because that looks consistent. Why do you think that is? Like, is there a reason why they're moving? Should I jump into the agency space? What's your thoughts on that?
That's interesting, man. I've got a personal vendetta against the info product space. Not to bash anybody or throw any grenades. I tried to play info a little bit and I didn't like it for a bunch of reasons. We launched a challenge called the 3X Shopify Challenge. We were world authorities in the space of smart shopping. And so we took smart shopping and said, who can we help the most and easiest with smart shopping? And Shopify store owners, because of their integration with Google Ads, were an easy target. So we launched this challenge. And then on the heels of the challenge, we sold this course. And we did okay. Our very first challenge, I think we did 50 grand on the first cart. And then there were, we sold services, got clients, we had a mastermind. There was a big ascension. So there was a couple $100K all in off of one challenge. The issue for me though, was people would take our course, execute on what we said, it wouldn't work. And then they'd come back and they'd start saying, oh yeah, those guys at Solutions 8 don't know what they're doing. And I'm like, let me see your account. And we start digging into a couple of them. And it's like, well, dude, your conversion tracking is set up like absolute dog shit. You don't know what the hell you're doing. Or you didn't spend enough money, or you didn't give it enough time, or you made too many changes, or you didn't change. So it put me in a position where my reputation is so important to me, dude. I've been in business for 15 years. I don't have one bad review online. And this info thing, the minute I tried it, I didn't like the chatter because I wasn't accountable to the end result, but I was still being held accountable to what people would do. And then the other thing that pissed me off is you'd get people that would buy a course and then start bashing the course. And I go look at the metrics. And I'm like, you took the first 20 minutes. The hell do you know? You know what I mean? You got to finish the damn thing, dude. Go do the work. So I think if you're in the info space, you have to have really thick skin, and you have to be positioned. You have to be positioned to survive the non-executables. And I'm not positioned to do that. The people that don't perform, there's some folks that have gotten away with it too and done really well. You mentioned Grant Cardone earlier. I think, who did this really well is Billy Jean. Somehow Billy Jean is Kevlar. And that actually, his education is good, dude. It's not bad at all. But he sells marketing, education, and training. And I've just never seen or heard anybody say anything bad about him. And I don't know if it's the way that he manages expectations or the way that he sells or the way that the courses come out, but everybody else that I know sells info, they have a tough time. You got guys like Don Miller with Story Brand, brilliant dude, phenomenal guy, high integrity, good man. And I just see some of the vitriol he has to put up with, and I don't want to do it. So I like agency because I'm held accountable to a result that I can control. And I also think here's the proof is in the pudding too. If you ever want to know what something's worth, go look at private equity companies. Their whole existence is based on valuing businesses. SaaS is worth more than anything. E-com's worth a little bit less than SaaS. Agencies are worth a little bit less than e-com. My valuation at my current EBITDA, which is under $5 million, is about 7 to 10x, depending on who you're talking to and what they're willing to pay. If I get over 5 million, my valuation, this comes from the folks over at Madison Alley, which they're the biggest M&A firm for agencies. My valuation goes to 10 to 13x. You can't do that in info. There's not enough longevity. The problem with info is you're going to exhaust the avatar immediately. And because they don't consume the product, the ascension is hard. You can only ascend somebody that's consumed, generally speaking. So I like service, I like SaaS, I like e-com, I don't love info. And, I'm saying that as a guy that didn't make a whole lot of money in the info space. I've got a buddy, you probably know Ryan Deiss. He's maybe one of the world's most successful info marketers ever. And he could probably come in here and slaughter the point that I just made, but I haven't been able to make it work in an environment that I want to play in long term. So that's my soft opinion. I think the reason agency owners want to get into it is because they're tired of having to do the work. And they look at info marketers and like, oh, all I do is produce a course and I get paid? Great. Well, I did that. I made the course. I got paid. I did it profitably, but I didn't see a world long term where I got to live there forever. And you'll notice that with info marketers too. I see these info marketers as like, oh, I sold a dating course and now I sold a crypto course and now I sold a marketing course. And it's like, okay, you have to be transient. You have to move from industry to industry and catalog to catalog because you can't sit around and drink from the same well. And I think that's That's a canary in the coal mine as far as I'm concerned. I hope I didn't just offend you.
Totally fine. I really appreciate that. How do you get the flywheel effect to kick in for an agency? Because when you sort of, if you were like, what's stopping you from going all in, or have you ever thought about going all in on your own brand, your own product, your own service? Well, I guess that's your agency, that's the service. Yeah, what's your thoughts on two things? I guess one, how do you get the flywheel effect to kick in into an agency where you're not constantly having to bring in the next client, constantly having this funnel, and I guess word of mouth kicks in, but it's like maybe 5% of your sort of clients would refer another one or two people. So that's the first question. And then the second question is, why not put all your sort of marketing knowledge into like a product that can have that flywheel effect, where you build this amazing sort of e-com product that sort of just spreads on its own, it's subscription based, and it just pushes on its own eventually?
No, so this is a brilliant question. And the first one is we're more or less there now as an agency. I haven't advertised our agency. We haven't put any paid ad spend in for, I can tell you exactly, actually, what are we on? End of June, all of May, all of April, and most of March. So it's been 3.5 months because we can't take on the work. I've got a 30-day waiting list. And the only thing stopping me from scaling is hiring. I don't have the talent, and the talent is hard to get. That's why I'm kind of excited about the recession, because there's going to be talent available to me. As far as the second half of what you just said, that I should have gotten there sooner. We're trying to do that now. We failed a couple of times. I want to buy small e-com brands. I want to just run around snapping up as many little e-com brands as I possibly can. And, you know, if somebody's listening to this and they're a small e-com brand and they want to sell or partner, that's my goal. Exactly what you just said, because I'm watching all of these clients that are making all this money and I'm getting my little fee, and I want to be on the recipient end. So me and my business partner we're striking performance-based deals, and we've got a couple of them. I mentioned the mobile home park lead generation. We're just the lead arm of that. We generate these leads, and then there's a team, a real estate investment team. They're nationwide, that they fulfill on the deal. We partnered with a guy that sells a very specific type of seafood. It's a consumable product on a membership basis. He does 20 million a year or gross revenue, which for consumables is low because margins are low, but we're profit participants on that type of deal. So my long-term goal is exactly what you just said. I don't want to be just service-based. I want to be the owner of the mechanism. And what's kind of cool is I just spent, 5 years being Google Ads specific, watching every single industry, and I know what industries move and what industries don't. So I'm going to be a little cautious the next year or two, just because of the recession. But as the recession hits, I'm a buyer, man. So there's going to be all these little businesses and it's going to suck too. It's going to be sad because they're going to be phenomenal little businesses, run by great people that just had bad timing. And if I can walk in and, help save the ship a little bit and become a majority owner, that'll be my goal. Exactly what you just said. Once you get good enough at something, you should be a profit participant. And I've got buddies that have been doing that for a long time. My buddy Scott Cunningham, he owns Socialite, which is an agency. He's the founder of Merchant Mastery. He takes a percentage of all the revenue he generates. Ed Leek, who's a real smart Google Ads guy out of the UK, he does the same thing. Neither of them are taking on any clients right now. They're both overwhelmed. So that's the problem when people are the most important part of your business, is people aren't scalable.
Yeah. When it comes to Google Ads and working with e-com stores, besides retargeting, how do you sort of get sales and conversions? Because like search ads, you're paying like $2-3 cost per clicks. YouTube ads, really difficult unless you have a Dollar Shave Club type creative. How do you sort of grow e-com brands with Google Ads besides retargeting?
Last year, if you asked me that question, the answer was smart shopping. This year, the answer is Google's Performance Max. Google rolled out a product called Performance Max that uses all of Google's demographic and psychographic profiling factors in order to identify who your buyers are and go out and get more of those buyers. So Google's Performance Max is going to say, hey, Andy just bought these blue light blocking sunglasses. Who demographically and psychographically look like Andy? And I'm not talking general demographics and psychographics. Google knows everything about you, and it's going to get super, super granular. I've never seen a product more powerful than Performance Max ever in my entire life. It's unbelievable the results that it's yielding. We have a publicly traded company that spends almost $2 million a month in paid ad spend. And the CEO, who's a turnaround CEO, who's brought in to turn the company around, told us in no uncertain terms, multiple times, we've saved the company. And we did it using Google Performance Max and specifically Google Performance Max's new customer acquisition, because this is a company that sells, trying to think about how to not give away their identity. They sell a product that people need on a consistent and recurring basis, but they couldn't generate new customers. PMax found out who their customers were and then went out and figured out a way to bring them in under their target CAC of $100. They've been telling us since they hired us, which was October or November of last year, we need our CAC to be under $100 on new customers. And it was like 240 or something. We hit the $100 new customer acquisition, and they thought that we were going to taper off. I think we're at like 60 right now and continuing to optimize. So when Performance Max works, and it works really well for e-commerce, works pretty well for SaaS, lead gen has been hit or miss because there's so much junk traffic and Google has no ability to identify it whatsoever. I've seen like 70 to 80, 90% of the leads that we're getting are just trash. They're garbage, they're click farms. And there are ways to contend with that, which is making it hard to convert, but they're not foolproof either. Man, if you're in the e-com space, it's not going to work as well. Here's the other thing too, and I'm going to say a bunch of stuff that's going to piss people off. This whole make money from your little Shopify drop shipping site, that was viable 3 years ago. It's been commoditized. You know, you got to be able to pay for traffic, and traffic is going to be 30% of the cart sometimes. So where's your margin? You know, like the easy money isn't easy for long. So you really have to invest time, effort, and energy. But if you're an e-commerce, I'm not going to tell you not to drop ship because there is some viability in drop shipping. But you know, if you are drop shipping, you can't use the drop shipping creative. You have to have GTIN codes. You have to have lifestyle images. You have to invest in this brand. You can't just roll up and be like, all right, I'm selling smartphone cases now, and go get in an industry that actually has a strong customer LTV. Because if your LTV sucks, there's nothing you can do on the front end. You want to be able to pay for traffic with your purchase and then profit on the back end. And all the e-com guys that really know what they're doing, Scott, I mentioned earlier, you know, he's I think the world's foremost authority in e-commerce. He just did digital marketer certification on e-commerce, and he banks on OTOs, upsells, one-time offers, order bumps. So all of his clients' profitability isn't in the core purchase; it's in the order bump. Which lets you know how aggressive he's willing to be with spend. So we really need to zoom out and look at how sophisticated the e-commerce market is, and then realize that you need to play at that level of sophistication. And the minute the course creators start selling courses on how to do something, it probably means that they stop making money doing it. So now they're just going to teach us how to do it.
When you have an e-com product that costs $30 and it doesn't really have an LTV, such as like a music box, a EDC pocket knife, a phone case, is it and your profit margin's like say $20, $25? Can you get a CPA under that price on Google?
You can, if you like. There's some creative ways to do it. Influencer marketing is a really good one. If you find the right influencer, that's the only where I would see like drop shipping e-com working, especially for low dollar SKUs, is if you went and found an influencer and you're like, holy shit, Polly Pocket over here is selling the daylights out of whatever, or she has all these little teeny boppers. I bet you this little, you know, bedazzled kit that I can source for nothing, I bet you that would go really well. So like if you can go play that intelligent connect the dot game, I think that you could probably make some stuff work. But that's because Polly Pocket is willing to work on performance. And by the way, influencers are a great undiscovered traffic channel as long as you don't go through those influencer proxies. Go directly to the influencer, because half of these people, they're kids. They're kids that don't know how to monetize their traffic. So you get to come to them and say, hey, I'll give you 20%. I'll give you 20% of everything I sell. Why would they say no to that? You know, especially if your product aligns really well with their avatar and they trust you to be honest. Show them the back end. Say, I'll log you into my Shopify. I'll give you access to my merchant processor. You can profit that way. But if you need to pay for traffic in a scalable fashion using any paid traffic mechanism, I don't care if it's Google or Facebook. I don't take anything that's under an $80 AOV with very few exceptions. So $80 average order value, and then strong lifetime value. And there are exceptions to that rule. We have a client who has a $4 AOV. He sells an industrial tape for HVAC repair. So people buy one roll of tape, see if it actually does what they want to do, but then their lifetime value is like $4,500. So he'll spend $120 to get a $4 purchase, knowing that everybody likes his stuff, and it's probably going to be $4 or $5 grand worth of purchases over the life of a customer. So that's very front-loaded investment, but for a long time play. But But I mean, man, e-com got super sophisticated in the last 2 years. You have companies like Clearco running around funding e-commerce businesses on a model that is absolutely brilliant, but built around what effectively amounts to hard money. E-commerce profitability and monetization is so consistent that there's a VC-backed, basically hedge fund is the way I look at them, with billions of dollars that they're just giving e-commerce store owners. That's how sophisticated this market is. Like, you know, the days of us just throwing up some Facebook ads and making money, man, like that's over. I remember them, you know, that was fun when it happened, but the market moved and people got smart.
So what's your thoughts on, what's like the low hanging fruit? Like if someone's 18, he just graduated from high school and he wants to get into a business model. Like Amazon FBA is impossible. As you said, e-com is pretty much impossible now. It's so sophisticated. Agency, is that sort of your recommendation, I guess, in that case?
Well, the problem is it's just the only thing I'm good at. Here's what I'll say is stop trying to do the things that scale. Everybody wants the thing that scales. If you're trying to get mailbox money while you sleep, you know, 4-hour work week, money on the beach, I just don't think that that's the way life works, at least not right now, unless you're really good at coding. If you build something, you know what I mean? But even then, man, like the minute you build it, there's going to be 50 little lookalikes that all go up on AppSumo and then they offer a lifetime deal and kill it. So I would go find a very specific niche that's geo-specific. And what I mean by that is, you know, if you niche down and decide like, oh, I'm going to help whatever is e-commerce store owners that sell sunglasses. Well, how many of those can you help before you have exclusivity issues? There are so many underserved markets. Think about nail salons. I know it's a really weird example. There is a nail salon. There's probably 2 nail salons on every major corner of every major city in the world. You think anybody's running around helping nail salons? Hell no. It's not a sexy industry at all. But if you walked into a nail salon and you're like, hey, I've got all of your marketing covered. I have a marketing automation solution, a website, all of your content, all of your social, all your blogs, all your emails, which you could build with Go High Level overnight, right? I don't know if you know High Level. It's a white label SaaS product that you could it's amazing, dude. It's the most disruptive marketing product in the world. It's $500 a month, and then you get to make your own SaaS product and then put as many people as you want on it and charge them whatever you want. You become the owner of the SaaS. So you take something like that, but you have to do the elbow grease. And so you go to all these nail salons and you're like, hey, for $100 a month, what if I handled all of your marketing? Who would say no to that? You know, or coffee shops or dry cleaners or insert your little teeny micro niche here. And by the way, you could build an entire business just on the businesses in your city. So, you know, we all, because of the way the internet works, everybody went big picture. And for the last 20 years, that's been the profitability model. We need to zoom back down now. People actually like knowing that you're close, that you're in their backyard, that, you know, do the things that don't scale. And that's the way to build up a solid little business. And when doing that, I talked about this on a previous podcast with somebody else. There's something called the corridor principle. So if you and I sat down, let's say that we're college roommates and, you know, we're 18 years old and we want to go figure out what the hell is going to make us some money. If you sit down trying to figure out what the next big thing is, you're never going to do it. But if you go get a job at a factory and you're on the assembly line and you're, you know, punch and steel or whatever it is you're supposed to do, you're going to be like, damn, this little thing that they have me using, the steel springs in this thing suck. And if it had better steel springs, it would be more effective and I'd be able to increase efficiency by 20%. Now, all of a sudden, you and your buddy have a steel spring company and you know exactly who to go sell it to and exactly what the value proposition is. It's called the corridor principle. Go start something, anything. And that thing is going to fail miserably, expect it, but it's going to yield the thing that helps you. I started Solutions 8 as a full funnel marketing agency. We weren't a Google Ads agency. We came to Google script kicking and screaming. So get started, provide value, niche down, do things that scale. Don't be afraid of cold calling, pounding the pavement, knocking on doors, like all the bullshit that nobody wants to do. That's where the money is. The money is where nobody wants to go. Isn't that funny? That's always true. If you want to know where the money is, it's where nobody wants to go. Yeah. Think about the thing that nobody wants to do. That's where the money is. And if you're willing to shovel shit, Mike Rowe talks about that in that Dirty Jobs show. It was really interesting. He talks about how it's all the millionaires that he's met are millionaires because they do the thing that nobody wants to do. And, you know, and stop aiming at the million, you know, just go get 1,000 MRR. If you have $1,000 in monthly recurring revenue, that's a hell of a freaking feat. You know, like Jordan Peterson says this, he says, aim low, set your goal not because you're selling yourself short, just because you can actually achieve that goal. And then once you're at 1,000 monthly recurring revenue, then you can bump it up to 5 and then 10 and then 50. Anyway, that got super preachy too, dude, but that's the best advice I've got.
Beautiful. One of the things I wanted to jump into was tell me about your content, like the YouTube, the podcast. How long ago did you get into that and what made you want to go down that route?
Our YouTube channel started a year and a half ago. I had a student actually, his name's Uzair. He owns a company called SF Digital, and he had a Google Ads channel in the UK. And he had when I met him, he had 13,000 subscribers, which for a niche channel is really good. And I asked him, I was like, dude, how on earth did you do that? And he goes, oh, I just shoot a video every day. And that felt so accessible to me. And so I shot a video, and he told me too, he coached me on it. Good dude. I mean, I'm basically his competitor, and he's, just being my buddy and helping me out. We're still friends. He goes, shoot a video every day for 90 days. And for the first 90 days, you're going to get nothing. And then on day 91, for whatever weird reason, there's this nice little uptick. And I did that. I shot a video every day for 90 days. I've shot a video every day since this happened, actually. And we're at 10,000 subscribers and a little more than that. And I think Uzair's at 20. But he also branches out too. He'll talk about other things outside of, he's not just Google specific. It's my number one lead acquisition source. Interestingly, I get more podcast downloads than I do YouTube views by many multiples, but YouTube gives me all the best clients. And it's because we give such epic value there. People are ravenous for it and they're begging to work with us. That's the other thing that's really cool to see is, I mentioned earlier, when you give, you get. We've got a wait list now. I've never had a wait list as an agency before. It's such a luxury. And it's a weird thing. People sometimes think that I'm negative selling. They're like, oh yeah, of course. I'm like, no, really, I can't take you. I don't have the resources. And it puts me in a position where I have to pick my clients. So, I review every single client. I've got a sales team of 4. I review every single, 5 now, actually, he starts tomorrow. I review every single client that our sales team brings to the table, and I let them know whether or not I think they're going to be viable. Because, especially in my business, if I don't keep you, I'm not profitable. So those first 3 to 6 months, that's all front-loaded investment. And if I don't have you past that, I'm not going to make any damn money. So I'm not going to, I've seen some weird ass business models cross my desk where I'm like, there's no way we're doing this. This is just, doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell. So that's the YouTube channel. The podcast isn't mine. The podcast is owned by a digital marketer. It's called Perpetual Traffic. It's been going for 5 or 6 years. The main host is a guy named Ralph Burns, super brilliant guy. He's the CEO of Tier 11, the number 1 Facebook ad agency on the planet. And I did a podcast interview with Ralph, and he just liked me. So he was losing his co-host because she went off and took another job somewhere. And so he asked if I'd be the co-host. And since then, I don't think I deserve any of the credit. At the same time, they brought on another producer named Hector, who's absolutely freaking brilliant. But we've skyrocketed as far as downloads. I think when I started, we were at 80,000 a month, and now we're at 300,000 a month or something. So that's gone really well. And I don't get a ton of leads from that because I think a lot of the listeners are really either DIYers or CMOs or, not necessarily my customers, but the leads I do get are crazy. My bread and butter for the longest time was people spending $3 or $4 grand a month in Google Ads. And now I'll regularly get leads for people spending a couple $100 grand a month. So, I was kind of fishing in a really small pond. And as soon as the podcast took off, it just changed, I think, the optics and the pedigree of our agency.
Yeah, because I've been seeing Sam Ovens, he's totally pivoted to just creating content and he saw how getting clients through ads is just this never ending sort of cycle and you're just digging deeper and deeper. But then he's sort of stopped posting videos because posting videos is hard. Creating content is hard. It requires a lot of energy. It requires it to sort of constantly optimize to the algorithm and create these interesting hooks and thumbnails. How have you sustained that?
That's why I do these talks. I do these little, I've done 3 of these today. I was on a podcast this morning. I did a podcast in the afternoon. This is my 4th actually. And It's because I learn people like you. They ask me super interesting questions, and then it gives me ideas and whatever for my own content. And then, even if a podcast is small, I don't give a shit, because if they're consistent, then, if you had 5 consistent subscribers and I got 1 of those, that's great. That's great. Build your castle 1 brick at a time. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yeah, I'm super passionate about the content creation piece. You'll never run out of things to say as long as you stay interested. And Sam Ovens is a good example. Look at what Sam does. His whole model, man, is training people and then selling other businesses to his trainees. Like that's not scalable per se, but he's killed it. I know 2 people in his mastermind. Uzair is one of them. And they're all telling me like, this is just the best thing we've ever done for our business. That guy's super, super brilliant.
Interesting. So how do you sustainably create content? Like, do you find yourself talking about the same things, getting bored? Do you have to like full prep the strategy and create PowerPoints? What are your YouTube formats like?
You should go check out my YouTube channel. It's just whatever I'm thinking about that day. If I have nothing to say, sometimes I'll run to Google News. But like my company Slack channel, I've got 85 employees. So if I open my company Slack channel, I'll actually do it with you. So I open my company Slack channel and then I go to the specialist thread, which is all of our, this is a great example. So all of the people running Google Ads post in this thread if they have questions, ideas, comments, complaints, whatever. So here comes Glenn, who's one of my best CMs, really brilliant guy. He's in Australia, actually. We're opening an Australia branch. He's going to head it up. And he goes, hey, team, I just showed our pod a way to use the Google language tool, AI. And he goes on to say, this will allow Google to measure your sentiment. Sentiment is what Google does to analyze copy on a web page and determine the positive or negativity. And then he shoots this Loom video. This is a video. This is probably, dude, if I wanted to, I could squeeze 10 videos out of this. But this is one comment, and it's just the most recent comment in this thread. A few comments earlier are all of our at-risk accounts. It looks like I have 200 clients, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 at-risk accounts. I could take each one of those accounts and shoot a video on why they're at risk. Here's what we did wrong, or here's what they did wrong. Here's what sucks about this client, or here's what sucks about their model, or here's what happened in the cyclical nature or whatever. Here's a comment from one of my CMs talking about how the new update template that we provided our CMs really helped him connect with his customer. Shoot a video on that template. Like there's no shortage of content as long as you're willing to give away everything. That's the other thing too. I'm not selling info. I give everything, all our SOPs, all of our ideas, all of our pricing, I don't care. I just wholesale give it away, which means everything is content. My onboarding, my sales processes, my whatever. I did a video with a client that was mad at us. Some dude like messaged me on Facebook saying, hey, you guys, you screwed up, blah, 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 blah. And I said, hey, no idea you felt that way. So sorry, let's hop on a call and talk about it. He told me his grievances. I told him that he was basically wrong, but I was like, dude, you misunderstood. He thought we were just selling his traffic back to him because we had a really, really, really heavy brand campaign. So he fired us, never told me why, and then got drunk one day and then started bashing me on Facebook. And I told him, I was like, bro, I was running Smart Shopping. Smart Shopping has hundreds of thousands, if not millions of impressions. I have to run a brand campaign because all that traffic is my traffic and I can prove it. And I showed him the attribution modeling tool. And then he was like, oh, thank you. And so I was like, do you want to shoot a YouTube video with me? And we just talked about, hey, if you have a disgruntled client, here's how to handle it. So man, there's just when you're in it, there's no shortage of content. And then, you can go troll your competitors or your clients, or every question you've ever gotten from a sales perspective, that's a video. Yeah. My CMs use our YouTube channel all the time. Here's why you can't touch Performance Max for 6 weeks after you launch it. Here's why we work off of 3-week sprints. Here's why we track conversions inside of Google Tag Manager instead of Google Analytics. Anytime you have a problem with a client, that's a video. Anyway, yeah, that's the internet, man. There's no shortage of shit for us to create. I get overwhelmed by the backlog of ideas I have.
Interesting, yeah, because I think one of the approaches I thought was more sustainable was just uploading all the consulting calls I would have with clients. Like if a client jumped on a call with me, hey, he's strung with, let's see, the last call. Some guy he just needed help uploading products to Shopify, so he didn't know how to source the products. Helped him with that process, uploaded the consulting call to my YouTube video, and it sort of didn't really work. And I have many of these consulting videos and they just don't work. But I think what I need to pivot to is just creating an actual video about that topic on what I showed that person. And that most likely would work better than like a 15-minute consulting chat.
That's brilliant. I love that idea. Collin, the kid that I mentioned earlier, he's doing that. I saw him post on Twitter. He said, I'll give you a free Google Ads evaluation if you let me publicly post the evaluation. So there's a great, gimme, which is you get one of the best Google Ads guys in the world to audit your account, but then he gets to, show everybody what you did wrong. So yeah, man, I think what you're doing now, just having a conversation with somebody, you could splice this. So we do that too in my YouTube channel. We go live every Friday and let our YouTube subscribers, just our members, ask us questions. And so in an hour, we probably get 50 questions, which would amount to almost one question a minute, like close to. And then we splice it up into, we take the 20 or so best questions and we splice them up into little minute-long videos, and we put them on Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube as shorts. And all I ever hear from somebody is, "Oh my God, I can't stop seeing you. You're like digital herpes." And it's because we're, taking content and repurposing it. I don't know if you know Dennis Yu. He's probably one of the best content marketers in the world. And I hired Dennis for private coaching, and he taught me the repurposing thing through Descript. And I just handed it to an EA who does this for me. So I shoot my videos and then it goes to her. She's in the Philippines, and then she slices them up and then puts them everywhere. So once you want to build a content system. Once you have the system in place, shooting the video is actually, it's pretty easy. And then after I shoot the video, if I don't have to do any work, because if I had to do the work, that's when it would die. If I'm the one that has to come up with the thumbnail and the title and the description and post it, like I would just get fatigued and I would give up. But if all I have to do is shoot the video, and I can do it from anywhere, pull up my phone from the airport because I'm, traveling for a speaking gig or whatever, and then just fire it off to Jack. Her name's Jack. She's real name's Jacqueline. Yeah, that makes life pretty easy.
Interesting. Have you ever considered doing have you seen like Bia Hezers, all these massive e-com sort of YouTubers where each video makes like 100K views, like they're making like so much money because their videos are but then again, they're like editing, they're doing the thumbnails, they're doing everything themselves, but then they're getting 100 times the amount of views as someone who's sort of doing on the go, just share what's my thought, post the type of videos. What's your thoughts on the other approach, creating like tailored YouTube algorithm views?
Do you know who Evan Carmichael is?
Yes.
So I got to meet Evan at the Genius Network. And Evan, I didn't know who he was either, which was really funny because I was giving a buddy advice on YouTube. Yeah. And Evan's he's kind, Evan's he's very humble. And so he was just sitting there very quietly listening. And then my buddy turns to Evan and he goes, "What do you think about that?" And Evan very politely goes, "It's about 80% right." And in my mind, I'm like, "Who is this guy?" And then my buddy's like, "Oh, by the way, this is the world authority on YouTube." And I was like, "Oh, okay, great." So Evan told me, I'm looking at Evan's notes to me right now. My videos span the spectrum. Evan says they need to be 10 minutes at a minimum. And he says you have to have 70% retention rate at the 1 minute mark. And I don't have anywhere near that. So I need to go improve upon that. He also says that I put my CTA at the end of the video. He says to put it in the middle. And then use the end to market other videos because YouTube likes retention. I put my image on the right. He says put it on the left so it doesn't get covered by the time code. And then I have really large, long titles. He says uses as little text as you can and make it as big as you can. And then make the image of me bigger because he wants you to brand your face over and over and over again. So I can tell you from the world authority on YouTube that I'm not doing it right. But I'm doing it good enough to have, an agency with a 30-day wait period. So that's kind of the other thing too, man, that I'd say is just like get out there and start. Do it badly. Which is fine because then you can optimize. But if you try to do everything perfect, you're never going to get anything done. That's
amazing. Thank you so much for your time today, Kasim. Really, really appreciate it. I just love how, you just so much knowledge. Where can people find more about you? What's your YouTube channel? Where's the best place for people to just learn more from you, Kasim?
Just Google Solutions 8. It's the name of my agency. You can find us on YouTube. My website's soul8.com. You can find me on Twitter. If you can't find me, I'm not doing my job right. So.
Thank you so much. Yeah. We've jumped so many different topics and you just have this breadth of knowledge from economics to just performance marketing. And I can tell it just from the authenticity and your confidence in your knowledge. So I really, really appreciate your time. I had a blast today.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me, Andy. Thanks, buddy.
Awesome. So that's another episode of the podcast. Hope you guys got value. If you guys made it this far, thank you so much for your time and we'll see you guys next week. Peace.